Okay, so this is going to be a video walking through the SAP ERP order to cash process. And so, we've talked a little bit about ERP systems and kind of the nature of ERP systems, kind of what they're designed for, and it, call it a set of integrated businesses. The key word, I think, is this idea of integration. This idea of an integrated business application or modules that are designed to do everything that you need to do in a business. Okay, so this is a let's see if I can get the laser printer. Okay, cool. So it's a set of integrated business applications and modules. All right, so it does individual. It handles supports individual pieces of the business, but all of these things tied together. All right. So, the idea, and because really what happens is it's really a matter of, in real life, the business does not operate in silos. The functions do not operate in silos. There's an interdependency across all of those functions that need to be taken into account. Which is what the ERP system sets out to take care of. All right, so a couple of things, obviously integrated modules. We just talked about that. Common definitions and common database. All right, so what happens is you have a single, with a lot of applications. What you saw in traditional forms, you had multiple applications, and maybe you would see the application develop an interface from one application to the other. In ERP systems, there's one physical database where all of the data is maintained in the one database. Right. If you update one module, you automatically update everything else. All right, and it's really what it does is it's designed to be a reflection of the way the organization does business. All right, so what happens is you've got, and this has always been the challenge around this stuff. There's an order to cash process. All right. Which, if you look at it from a high level, there's specific. It works. You do. You take the order. You create the. You do pick it. You pick it. You create a delivery. You pack it. You ship it. You bill it. But there's details. So the devil's in the details. So what happens with the ERP systems are that there's 80%. The idea is an ERP system can give you 80 some odd percent of your total process, and then the last 20% needs to be, that's a gap that needs to be filled. There's a bunch of different ways to do it. You can redesign your process to make it more like what the system has. You can write extensions and code and programs to kind of make it, kind of move that along. But the idea is that ultimately an ERP implementation reflects that organization's way of doing business. And the idea of what you want to look at is, rather than looking at the functions, look at something we call the value chain. So the value chain was developed by a gentleman like Michael Porter back in the 80s. And his observation is that if you look at any organization, there's a core set of activities that take place, which he calls the value chain. So you bring raw materials in, and as you go through that process and out the door, and ultimately convert it into cash, we add value as it goes along. So that's the value chain. So and then any other function the business has is really a supporting function. All right. So the idea is with the ERP systems, it's really built around this idea of a value chain model. All right. So popular systems, Oracle. Has been in the ERP game for a while. Banner is a specific application for higher education, so for schools. I believe we use it here at LaSalle. Workday is a relatively new entrant into the market. Their claim to fame is they actually work as a cloud. So rather than implement and running it on your own systems, what you do is you get a subscription and you log on to the site and work on their systems through a web browser across the internet. PeopleSoft was a kind of an early on HR application. Ultimately, got acquired and sucked into the Oracle universe. All right, and then finally SAP. So what is SAP? So a little explanation here. It's a multinational software company, right, based in Waldorf, Baden-Württemberg. It develops ERP software to manage business operations. Right, it is another as we would say, another ERP system. It is one Oracle from a market perspective. SAP and Oracle really dominate the ERP space. All right, the U.S. headquarters is actually in the Philadelphia area in Newtown Square, right off Westchester Pike. So they've been in this game at least 25 years, 27 years, going on maybe 30 years. In this particular, kind of the ERP space. Prior to that, they developed a previous generation of software. The original company was founded by five guys from IBM in 1972, so they're coming up on 50 years in existence. All right. So sales order processing. So we got a bunch of structures in a company. So it's not just simply a matter of taking an order and shipping stuff. All right, there is a structure that has to be set up. All right, and this is a kind of an SAP thing. So SAP puts a lot of emphasis on structure, and it is written by a German company, so it tends to be very Teutonic. And if you could have Teutonic software, it's Teutonic software. All right, so there's a bunch of structures that have to be set up in order for the sales operation to be implemented. All right, so a sales organization is defined as it's the section of the business responsible for negotiating sales conditions and the distribution of goods and services. So that's really that's what its purpose is. So it's the top organization level in which you roll up your sales figures. All right, so what happens is you've got one of the things that integrates with the SAP system is the financials. All right, so what happens is there's a very tight integration between the financial side of the house and the sales side of the house. So the sales organization is tied in with that. There is a idea of a company code. All right, so what happens is you have a hierarchy of an organization. So a sales organization can only be assigned to one company code, but a company can have more than one sales organization depending upon the nature of that organization. Right. A distribution channel, which is subordinate to the sales organization, is really the mechanism through which we move products to customers. Right. Distribution channel can be assigned to serve more than one sales organization, so it's not necessarily a one-to-one relationship. And distribution channels allow for what we call conditions. All right, to figure out orders and pricing and order quantities and way materials should be handled. So what they call it, there's functionality that SAP calls conditions. So you have pricing conditions, which allow you to create kind of a program to calculate what the price should be given the circumstances. Like what is your discount? What is your bulk, what does your contract agreement say? All these different things get factored in, which ultimately you run them all through, and ultimately you come up with the price. All right. A division is really around the idea of, for product lines. All right. So you need at least one division. Divisions can be assigned to more than one sales organizations. And it's the idea, it controls our access to the materials. All right, so you have a division, one division can have multiple product lines, and you don't cross the lines. Right. The sales area is where we take all this stuff and collect it all together. That becomes the sales area. It's a combination of the sales org, the distribution, and the division. And what happens is your master data and sales documents, all the stuff that kind of defines your customers and what they buy, are linked to the sales areas. So and I like this. Simple organization structures are usually preferred to complex ones. All right, but the problem sometimes is organizations are complicated. All right? So you try to make it as simple as you possibly can given the circumstances. For our case study here, we are Fitter Snacker. All right, so they haven't the ERP system that we're working with over in the Czech Republic is a company called Fitter Sales. In the case study, we have a kind of kind of the business description, business case of kind of what's going on with that. They have a wholesale business. They have a direct sales business. Now, another term here, a shipping point. A shipping point is where we ship stuff from. Okay, so it's a fixed location that carries out our shipping activities. It could be a loading dock, a mailroom, could be something. All right, a plant can have multiple shipping points. All right, so you can have multiple docks, of things that are going out the door. You need to know what the shipping point is in order to tell somebody to, where is it going to ship out of. All right, and then the dates, the lead times on the dates, the shipping dates. We associate that with the shipping point. So if somebody's going to go from point A to point B, we look at where that shipping point is located to the destination, and we can create an algorithm which says this is how long this is going to take, so this is the day it's going to show up. So the customer order cycle is, we have pre-sales activities, so we can do things like pre-sales activities would include things like creating a quote, or doing an inquiry or something, or a sales rep going in and talking to the customers. The sales order processing is actually the creation of a sales order in the system. We're going to buy X materials, X number of pounds of this material, or whatever form it comes in. Once the sales order is in the system, we figure out where we're going to source it from, where are we getting the material from. We then pack it up, ship it, and then simultaneously create a billing document, which is where we get our payment, or the company gets the payment on the back end. All right. So this is a cycle. All right. It reflects different places in different pieces of the organization. It represents different players in the organization. For example, sales order processing and like the inventory sourcing don't have to be anywhere near each other. As a matter of fact, sales order processing can be in one country, and the inventory sourcing can be on the other side of the planet. All right, so this is going to be fairly distributed, and the thing that glues the process together is the ERP system. All right, so we talked about pre-sales, sales support, pre-sales, and pre-sales documents. So it's kind of whatever, kind of our ongoing engagement with the customer. So as we're learning different things about them, learning about their, that we believe that they are going to be ordering X amount of product at a particular point in time. So you can kind of capture that information and really kind of use it. You can't do it obviously until the order gets it, but you can kind of prepare. All right. So, in our case study, we do we create an inquiry and save it, for X material, and then we were able to go back and take that inquiry and execute, create the sales order and processing. All right, so inquiries and quotes can be used as a starting point. It'll kind of give us a head start. Sales order processing, customers will place orders with some sort of representative who will create the document with information regarding the customer, the materials ordered, the pricing conditions, the schedule lines, which the schedule lines dealing with the shipping. All right, what is going to be shipped? When is it going to be shipped? Quantity is going to be shipped, and what is the ETA, delivery information, and then billing information. All right, so all of this stuff together, we have different pieces of information that are in the ERP system that all come together. So as we call this here, to create this document. So the terminology that gets used in this, a document is, the electronic capture of a business event. Inventory sourcing. First thing we check: do we have the material to sell? Or what's our availability check? If we don't have it in inventory, maybe it's scheduled to be produced at some period of time. So there's a lot of information that kind of goes into that, and then we can figure out how we will supply it. All right, stock on hand, or production purchase orders that need to be executed, or to a make to order production. Dell used to, I'm not sure what the heck they do now, but Dell used to, when their PC manufacturing was done in the U.S., would do make to order. All right. So what happens? They wouldn't maintain an inventory. They would get an order, and then they would assemble the PC to your specifications. And get it back out to you in a 24-hour period or something like that. Or we could get things from external suppliers or ship from another plant or warehouse. But this is really where are we going to get to meet this order. Sourcing occurs when we create the order, or if we change the order, and when we create the delivery document. All right, so there's a step. The delivery is a separate step from the sales order. Sales order captures the information. The delivery establishes what's going to get picked and from where. All right, and it happens when we create the order, and it also creates, when it changes, and also when we actually create the delivery, as we're getting ready to send it out the door. So delivery, a couple things we do here. We create the delivery documents, paperwork. A lot of times, depending upon the material you're shipping, you have to have the supporting documentation, like a bill of lading is a critical item when you're shipping chemicals. All right, so if you don't have a bill of lading, then you get pulled over, then delivery stops. All right. So we can, also within delivery, we can transfer material if we don't have it. We can transfer orders from one place to another. So we can track where, and we do a transfer order because we want to track where things are going from place to place. We want to be able to track the history of where products are being, kind of how material is moving around in our organization. We can kind of know at any given point in time, what is our inventory, what is our, what do we have on stock, and what do we have that's in the pipeline. Packing information, if required, not everything has to be packed, but if you have packing, we do it here. And then what we do is we call a post the goods issue or post goods issue, which is where we update the accounting and inventory data. And then I believe this is also legally the point where the material transfers, the ownership of the material transfers from us to the customer. Billing document. So the billing document is, once we've sent it out the door, we create the billing document using the information from the sales order, what was created, and the delivery document, and use it to create a billing document, which is then used to create the invoice. All right, and there's a lot of different ways this can work. We can set up auto payments. We can, any number of different means. People can, pay in cash. People can pay, EFT, electronic fund transfer. We have a whole bunch of different ways. A couple things in our system. What it'll do is the customer's accounts receivable account, will debit it and then credit the revenue account. All right, so we can do a bunch of stuff of when this comes out. All right, so theoretically, when things go out the door, we can recognize the generation of revenue. All right, and we have a trace of how that's done and where it's at. Payment, final step. It can be posting the payment against the invoices, and then reconciling the differences. A lot of times what organizations will have is a tolerance level for an invoice. So what will happen is if somebody short pays it and it's within 5%, it'll simply accept it. All right. Otherwise, what it will do is you can do a partial payment if there's something happens. Say, for example, customer only sends a partial payment, we can apply the partial payment and to the account, and then basically keep the invoice open. All right, and then we also have situations where with defective material or material returned for credit, there's a whole set of procedures that are tied in with the order to cash process around that, the exception processing. So that pictorially, this is what is going on. All right, so these actually can represent different organizations in a company or different departments. So pre-sales would be your sales force or marketing people. Sales order processing can be within a call center. Sourcing is usually people in warehouses. Sourcing, and delivery transportation, that's usually an operation that takes place in a warehouse. Billing is part of the accounting, and the payment accounting. So invoice and accounts receivable. All right. So as you can see, we've got a whole bunch of different interactions, that are occurring, and as we said before, can occur any place on where we can have a connection. So any place on the planet where we have a system or we have a network connection that can access this system, they can do this work. So you see a lot of stuff where you'll see different pieces of the operation can be outsourced, can be moved offshore, or moved to different locales, whatever's kind of what is going to be the most efficient for the organization to use. Right. So the document flow. So as we're doing this, as we're executing all this stuff, what we're generating is we're generating a trail of documents. All right. So we create an order document, we create a delivery document, we create an invoice document, we create accounting documents. All right. And what we have the ability to do is within the system, we have something called a document flow. What document flow lets us do is at any given point, I can go and look at that order and see the history of the order. And what will happen is these numbers are all going to be different. All right. So what will happen is, when I create an order, so it'll automatically assign a number to the order. That number is not used for the delivery number. When we create the delivery, it creates its own order. It'll create its own delivery number. Or if I do a transfer order, it'll have its number. And post goods issued, creation of the delivery and the invoice, they all have their own numbers. All right. The document flow, though, keeps track of all this stuff. All right. So we look at this as a kind of an end-to-end process. All right. And each step along the way, as I'm moving from step to step and piece by piece, what is happening is this data is, we're collecting and tracking all the documents. So at any given point in time, we can go back and take a look at the history of what happens when it got started, kind of where things were at. All right. So this is kind of an example, the picture of what a document flow would look like. All right. Master data. So in order to set this stuff up, there's two things we have within the ERP system. One is what we call the configuration, is where we set the system up to do to behave in a particular way. All right, so it's not writing a program. We're not writing the code necessarily, but we're defining how a particular function should operate. All right, and then we have master data, which is kind of the core data about our customers, about our materials, about our pricing, all right, that we use as part of our processing. All right. When we do a sales order process, we will take information from the customer and from the material that's already in the system, combine them together to create the order. And we'll go and we'll pull information from pricing. These are all set up in advance. All right, and basically, this is kind of this is foundational stuff. If you have this, keeping attention to your master data and getting your master data right goes a long way to helping you, work your way through issues and making sure your data is accurate. Really, the flow of data or the flow of an order is driven by what we have in the configuration, how we configure the system, and then the information that's in this master data. So the master data is critically important for the execution of the system. So as we show here, when we create the order, we're sourcing data from the customer master, material master, pricing conditions, our shipping point information. We can pull information from quotes and inquiries and all sorts of stuff. All right, all that stuff is combined together to create an order. Now, just a little bit more about the shipping point, because you can ship things a whole bunch of different ways. You can ship things by truck. You can ship things by rail. You can ship things by boat. You can ship things multimodal. So your trip, if you send something we used to have inbound raw material coming in from Chile. All right, that would be a multimodal. What would happen would be it would leave Chile by ship, come to a U.S. port, be transferred to a train, come by rail to a railhead, come off the rail, be put into a truck, and then trucked to the plant. All right, so as you can see, a lot of moving parts in that. All right, so this logic, so the shipping point is really kind of we define the whole transportation, and really depending upon the business, transportation can be a big part of the overall execution. All right, the transportation function can be very important in terms of the operational efficiency and customer satisfaction. So this is an example of what we call kind of our scheduling. We have backward scheduling, all right, which is based upon this our requested delivery date. When we would be able to kind of when will certain things have to happen, all right. Versus forward scheduling, stock available forward scheduling would be the creation of a new material availability date. That's coordinated with the transportation planning date, with the loading date, the goods issue date, and the new confirmed delivery date based on our best estimates of where the stuff is at. Now, something can happen in transit, anywhere along the line, something can happen. All right, but that's our best information that we can move forward with. All right. A delivery. So a delivery can be created for each sales order, and we can also break these things up so we can create multiple deliveries. We can't do the whole thing. We can't do the complete order, but we can do a partial delivery. All right. Or conversely, I can take a whole bunch of orders, combine them together onto one delivery for efficiency's sake. All right. So so the idea is all of this data will come together, and we can either do one order to many, one to one, or one to many, or many to one. Right. The picking process, these are really the steps within this, done within the warehouse. We create the delivery, whatever transfer orders to move material, confirm the transfer order. Once we have everything gathered together, we can do our delivery quantity complete, or if there is an error, if there's differences, we come in, we will, create a transfer order for the variance quantity. All right, so this is all, assumed. There's an end-to-end assumption of, perfect order, what we call the perfect order from step A to step Z. All right, and then there is, the exception processing. And ideally what you want to do in an organization is you want to minimize your exceptions. Right? You want to get as many perfect orders as possible because that's the most cost efficient, and the ones that drive your customer satisfaction. Right? And then here's our billing. Once again, we can do all sorts of different ways to do this. So I can have a sales order, put it on multiple invoices. Remember, the sales order, the invoices are generated through the delivery. So I can create multiple invoices, or what I call an invoice split. Or I can have a one-to-one relationship for a delivery and an invoice. All right. Or once again, I can collect multiple sales orders and multiple deliveries and use that to generate a single invoice. So all these scenarios are possible. It really depends on the business. Every business kind of does its own thing. And then finally, the post payments. All right. So it's not necessarily a one-to-one basis. An organization can order products. You can order tons of product. Like we used to sell soda ash, so we would sell tons of soda ash, combine everything on a combined billing, and then with the expectation is the company would pay a single. They weren't paying for the individual rail car; they were paying for a month's worth of shipments. Right, and as we said, we can also as we say here, we can apply partial payments, which is a reality. People are going to contest and only send half of what is owed. Then that becomes a situation where it has to be kind of worked out. All right. So with that, so that's the background for what we call the fitter snacker exercise, which is the order to cash processing that you've gone through. All right. But I wanted to give that grounding so you have a little familiarity with what this kind of what what an ERP system does and kind of the complexities that it undertakes.